Male. This is one of the two most recognized genders in human history. Across nearly every culture and civilization, being male has traditionally been tied to biology, specifically being born with certain chromosomes, hormones, and physical characteristics. But gender, even in the most traditional sense, is more than just biology. It also includes how a person is raised, what roles society expects of them, and how they see themselves. A boy grows up learning what it means to be a man in his culture, and that experience varies widely from one place to another. In some societies, men are expected to be providers and protectors. In others, those boundaries are much more flexible. Either way, male as a gender identity is deeply personal, even when it looks straightforward from the outside. Female. Like male, female is one of the oldest and most universally recognized gender identities. It is traditionally associated with a specific biological makeup, but the experience of being a woman goes far beyond that. Throughout history, women have been defined by their roles as mothers, caretakers, and community members, but also as leaders, creators, and thinkers. A woman in ancient Egypt held different expectations than a woman in medieval Europe or a woman living in a modern city today. What stays consistent is that being female is not just a biological fact for those who identify this way. It is a lived experience, shaped by culture, history, and personal identity. For the vast majority of people, male and female remain the primary way they understand and describe themselves. Cisgender. This term describes a person whose gender identity matches the sex they were assigned at birth. If someone was born biologically male and also identifies as a man, they are cisgender. If someone was born biologically female and identifies as a woman, the same applies. The word itself comes from the Latin prefix cis, meaning on the same side. It was introduced into broader conversation in the 1990s by researchers who wanted a neutral, non-clinical way to distinguish people who do not experience a conflict between their birth sex and their gender identity. Most people in the world are cisgender, and for a long time, there was simply no word for it. It was just considered the default. Having a term like this matters because it helps create a more balanced and precise way of talking about gender for everyone. Transgender. A transgender person is someone whose gender identity does not match the sex they were assigned at birth. A person born biologically male may identify as a woman. A person born biologically female may identify as a man. The experience of being transgender has existed throughout recorded history, appearing in ancient cultures from South Asia to the Americas, though the language used to describe it has changed significantly over time. Today, many transgender people choose to transition, a process that can include changes in name, clothing, pronouns, and sometimes medical treatment. It is important to understand that being transgender is not a phase or a trend. Research and medical consensus widely recognize it as a genuine aspect of human identity. Non-binary. This term covers a wide range of gender identities that do not fit neatly into the categories of man or woman. A non-binary person might feel like they are somewhere between male and female, or outside of both entirely, or that their gender shifts over time. Non-binary identities have existed across many cultures for centuries. Several indigenous cultures in North America, for example, have long recognized what they call two-spirit people, individuals who carry both masculine and feminine qualities and hold a respected place in their communities. In modern usage, non-binary became more widely used in the 2000s as people sought language that better described their experiences. Many non-binary people use the pronouns they/them, though preferences vary. It is less a single identity and more an umbrella for people who simply do not feel that the traditional binary captures who they are. Genderqueer. Genderqueer is similar to non-binary but carries its own distinct history and meaning. The term emerged in the 1990s initially as a more politically charged identity that challenged traditional ideas about gender. People who identify as genderqueer may reject the idea of fixed gender categories altogether. They might blend masculine and feminine traits, shift between them, or identify with neither. While non-binary is often used as a broad, neutral descriptor, Genderqueer tends to carry a stronger sense of pushing back against social norms around gender. Someone who identifies this way might feel that both man and woman are social constructs that do not reflect their inner reality. The identity is deeply personal, and two people who both use the word genderqueer might experience their gender in completely different ways. Genderfluid. Genderfluid describes a person whose gender identity shifts or moves over time. On some days, a genderfluid person might feel more masculine, on others, more feminine, and on others still, somewhere in between or entirely outside those categories. The shift can happen gradually over weeks or months, or it can change from day to day. This is not confusion or instability. For genderfluid people, that movement is simply how their gender works. Think of it like this. Most people assume their gender is fixed, like a permanent address. For a genderfluid person, gender is more like a journey, always in motion. The identity has gained more visibility in recent years, though the experience itself is not new. Many historical figures and cultural traditions describe people whose sense of self moved fluidly between what their society considered masculine and feminine. Agender. Agender describes someone who does not identify with any gender at all. The prefix a means without, so agender essentially means without gender. A person who is a gender may feel that gender simply does not apply to them. It is not that they are between genders or shifting between them, but rather that the entire concept of gender feels absent or irrelevant to their identity. Some agender people describe it as feeling gender neutral, while others say they feel completely outside the gender spectrum entirely. An example might be someone who, regardless of how they were raised or what biological sex they were assigned, simply never felt connected to being a man, a woman, or anything in between. Agender people may use they or them pronouns or other neutral pronouns, though again, preferences are personal. Bigender. A bigender person identifies with two genders. Those two genders might be male and female, or they might include non-binary identities as well. Unlike genderfluid, where gender shifts and changes over time, a bigender person may experience both genders simultaneously or move between them in a way that feels more distinct and defined. Imagine someone who fully identifies as both a man and a woman, not as a blend of the two, but as both, with equal weight. This can affect how they present themselves in different settings, how they want to be referred to, and how they relate to others. Bigender as an identity challenges the idea that a person can only hold one gender at a time, reflecting the broader reality that human experience is rarely as simple as a single category. Demi-gender. Demi-gender describes someone who partially, but not fully, identifies with a particular gender. The most commonly discussed forms are demigirl and demiboy. A demiboy, for example, might partially identify as male, but feel that the label of man does not fully capture who they are. A demigirl might partially identify as female while feeling that something else is also present. The demi prefix, meaning half, captures that sense of partial connection. This identity is often described as feeling like you have 1 foot inside a gender and 1 foot outside of it. It is not about being unsure. People who identify as demigender often have a very clear sense of what they feel. It is simply that the full weight of a traditional gender label does not quite fit